a beautiful and fun-filled place, filled with people and pets alike, earning bucks, making neons, and having fun. But did you know that in the shadows, there is a darkness lurking at the heart of Adopt Me? It rarely rears its hooded head, and has an impact on everyone's day-to-day lives, even now. A secret story lost to the annals of time, that is, until today. Today we will be peeking behind the shadowy curtains to read from the darkest chapters of Adopt Me's history. Pages that have been drenched in blood, a telling of the ruin and the greed that has been woven into the very fibre of Adoption Island. As you know, my name is Matt, and these are the tales from behind the curtain. Our story begins a long time ago in a place far, far away from where Adoption Island rose from canyons of snow. At this time, the world was much like the one that you and I know. It was filled with people across the globe going to work, going to school, and living their lives however they might like to live them, completely unaware of the horror that was fast growing without any of their knowledge. We turn our attention to a country. It was called Adoptopia, and at the time, it was one of the most powerful countries that the world had ever seen. Its empire stretched from ocean to ocean, continent to continent, all because of a focus on technology and advancement. The scientists and top brains in the Adoptopia leadership had led the country to discover incredible innovations, like potions that would allow someone to grow to incredible heights, or shrink down so that they were microscopic. Others would allow you to turn invisible, or even allow the user to fly. But the man who was right at the top of the chain of command, the president of Adoptopia himself, had his sights set on goals that were much grander than any Adoptopia had attempted before. The president was a man named Kurt, and he had always been a man who had wanted to push Adoptopia to its most vaunted aspirations. Aspirations such as developing the ability to travel through time. Kurt had become weary of the progress of society. Adoptopia was great, but it could have been so much more. It could have been a utopia. That was his plan. Kurt wanted to unlock the secrets of time travel, and then take steps into the future and the past to create a new utopia in the present. He would manipulate society from the shadows to make a better world, not just for him, but for everyone. Kurt and his team of scientists ran into issues with this new plan almost immediately. Time travel is a power-hungry endeavor, and no conventional means of generating power could possibly generate enough to provide Kurt's time machine with the levels of energy that it needed to send him on an adventure through time and space. He required a solution, and that decision was how the world began to draw closer to its doom. Kurt was frantic. He and his scientists began to trial every known element, every known compound they could get their hands on. They tried every single approach science could conceive of, but every single attempt they made ended at a dead end. Kurt, who had become known across his empire as someone who had become president of Adoptopia through merit, innovation, and skill, felt as if he were now a complete and total failure. He had built himself up as a colossal figurehead and innovator, a great man by any measure who brought the human race up to potentials that they never would have realized without him. And now he had been brought low by his failure, as if he were a ship that had been irreparably damaged during a storm and sunk down to the dark depths, never to be seen again. He wallowed in self-pity and despair for days, and days turned to weeks, and weeks turned to years. Eventually, a mysterious voice called out to him from the void itself.
We have the answer to your problems, Kurt. You need only agree to the deal I offer.
Its twisted yet honeyed voice whispered. The deal itself that Kurt signed has been lost to the winds of time, but what we do know is what happened next. The end of almost all things. The apocalypse. the end of the world. The day after Kurt signed his deal with the shadowy entity that called out from the void, he approached his very best friend, and most decorated and award-winning scientist, Tom. Tom was well aware that Kurt had been wallowing in grief for what seemed like a failed project. He felt that the blame lied primarily at his feet. That was why he was so shocked when he saw Kurt grinning from ear to ear, as happy as he'd ever seen the man before. At first glance, Kurt looked happy, fulfilled, and positively jovial. But as Tom looked deeper into the eyes of his best friend, he could see something, a glimmer, a flicker of darkness. If asked, he would describe it as not an addition, but a subtraction of anything good. Kurt was clutching onto a metallic briefcase as if it were the only thing that mattered, and written on it were the words Isotope D0G. Kurt wanted to put the new powerful isotope directly into the energy chamber of the time machine. He was sure it would work and nothing would change his mind. But Tom was a man of science and science only, and the laws of science stated that things needed to be tested again, and then tested some more before they could be used. Kurt wasn't happy with that kind of an answer. He tore open the briefcase and ripped the glowing white ominous orb that was inside of the box out. He darted past Tom and took off at a speed so fast that he almost appeared to be flying through the air. Without even thinking, Kurt slammed the orb of isotope D0G into the time machine and nothing happened. Boom! We don't know what happened in that laboratory on that fateful morning. The story I am telling you today is decades old, and all of the history books are tattered beyond repair. All we know is that the consequences of those actions were vast and far-reaching. It was a catalyst for everything that was yet to come. When Kurt slammed the isotope into the time machine and turned it on, a chain reaction began to spread across the breadth of the globe. The temperature immediately began to spike, and the magnetic poles at either end of the world flipped on one another. It was as if global warming had been sped up and intensified to levels never thought possible. Glaciers around the world were melted in an instant, and while it took a little bit more time, all the ice at both poles of the planet melted away to nothing as well. When the water came, it came fast and relentlessly. Cities were flooded, planes were drowned. Soon, almost nothing was left. Kurt had wanted to create a utopia where people could live and thrive and be happy. Instead, he had created an apocalyptic, drowned world in which no one and nowhere was safe. Flooding was widespread across the world, and in those places where the waters hadn't reached, it was simply far too warm for life of any kind to exist. If it weren't for the efforts of a singular man, a savior, humanity would have surely been doomed. This man was Santa. Before the events of the melt, no one really knew if Santa was real or not. But when the world began to burn and the poles began to melt, Santa revealed that he was in fact real, and he made it his mission to save as many people as he could with his bigger on the inside sleigh. He bundled up as many people and as many animals as possible and took them back to his home, which had thawed to become what we now know as Adoption Island. After he had saved as many people and animals as he could, Santa gathered the Elder Gods and brought them to meet with Kurt to discuss his fate for being the arbiter of such a horrifying disaster. Once more, what exactly was said in this meeting was lost to time. All we know is that Kurt's son, Bert, managed to slip into Santa's sleigh and climb on board. He too was saved from the calamity to grow up on Adoption Island. This was a peek behind the curtain, a story from the past of Adopt Me, the legend of how the world ended and Adoption Island came to be. This is the end of Chapter 1. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a comment below and like the video. And don't forget to subscribe with the notification bell on. Or else. Follow us at Play Adopt Me everywhere so that you never miss the newest and most up-to-date